Hey folks, Tactile here with a new video, a new kind of video, Tactile Lo-Fi, long format. We're just gonna build and talk. I couldn't really think of a scripted way to do a 35-minute video that would really feel natural, so I'm just gonna build away here and talk about what I'm doing as it happens. I might speed it up here and there when I start to flatten out big areas or paint, but other than that, it's one long shot. There's no cuts. You guys will see everything that goes into building a structure like this. Right now I'm just building a lawn for the house. We're up near a gateway. That's your easy spot to do some true flat. There's the 45 and 60 degree zones as well, but they need a little bit more explanation, and we'll look at that in another video. For now, we're just going to build up next to a gate where it's nice and easy. Alright. We got the lawn all worked out here. Now you might be able to see, depending on your screen, some little imperfections in the surface, and that's going to happen. That's from the edges of your terrain tool. When you're building a big lawn surface like this, like a great big huge area that you're flattening out, you don't want to accidentally grab one of those wrinkles if you're going to spread out that surface further. So just dig yourself a little divot, pop your leveling block again. That'll give you a nice fresh surface that you know is good, and you can spread out from there. Some of you right away are probably thinking, this isn't creative though, and I want to build my stuff in adventure mode. That's where I want to do my true flat. All the rules that I'm going to give you here apply to adventure as well as creative. The main differences are being able to control your terrain tool size and how much the true flat really wants to cooperate with you. Like where I popped a leveling block for a fresh surface back there, you're going to want to do that all the time in adventure. Every time you start to spread out a surface, if it's possible at all, pop a fresh block, get a good surface to spread from. Now right here I'm popping out my leveling block as the corner post of the house that we're going to build. This is probably the easiest, quickest way to do stuff like this and build out the bones of your structure. Every time I pop this leveling block, that's a voxel height. You can see the triangles on the side, those are a voxel height. That's going to be the main measurement that you use when you build in true flat. Even though we're on this nice, slick, smooth voxel surface, we're still basically building with cubes. So you can count everything as squares when you're measuring distance. There's two major ways to do this: the leveling block, like I was showing you there, and you can also just use the leveling block sort of as a starting surface and spread out with your terrain tool as well. Since these walls are all 2 voxels thick, I have my terrain tool set to size 220. The main thing to remember is that the size of your tool is not just the width, it's how deep you're going to build the soil as well. So I am limited to how big I can make that. Now we see these 45s popping up again where 290s meet. That means the true flat there is good. If those 45s weren't there, then I would have some fixing to do. Now we'll come inside here and we'll smooth up the surface, since we have an inside and an outside to the structure. Alright, and again just sort of leaving a spot for a window. I'm not worried about finishing off the end of this wall, since we have another wall that's going to go at the end of the house here anyway. I'm just going to get my height figured out here. And then I will use the leveling block to finish out this window. That's just going to make life a lot easier. That's the bottom sill. And I don't want the window to be any smaller than what it currently is, so I'm going to dig out a divot up at the top and then put my leveling block up into that and pop it out. There we go. Now just smooth out the sides. This side I could dig out and use the leveling block the same way that I did with the top of the window, but I see a little piece of true flat there, so I'm going to spread that out instead. And this corner doesn't look quite right, so we're going to dig it away and then flatten back out. An octagon, there we go. Now we're just going to fix up this little empty spot here, fill this in, go inside, fix the same spot. Alright, we got a window. Now this wall I'm going to frame everything out with the leveling block. It's kind of my preferred way to put in your windows and doors when you're putting a wall together. If I wasn't going to have any windows and doors, I probably would just fill in with the train tool. There we go, we'll build this out, make this one side of our door. For doing small detailed work like this, you really want to have your train tool shrunk down to the smallest size possible. And that'll just help you square out the corners. Alright, I got that one side done. I'm going to use the block here to put in the other side of my doorway. We might as well put in another window here, so I'll pop the block for the bottom of the sill. And we got a piece of train that didn't come out quite right here, so again I'll dig that away and then fill it back in with some true flat. Same problem here, so we'll use the same solution. Now I'm just going to pop the block here and see how long I can make this wall. See how big of a house I can get on this lawn. This will be the corner of the house right here. I'm going to use the leveling block here to shape out a window on this wall. Right here I'm just making sure to use the leveling block on the flat part of the soil rather than the 45. If you pop it up on the 45, it can get a little bit unpredictable and maybe give you 2 voxels thickness instead of just 1. So to keep it under control, I just make sure to always put it on the flat section. And now I'm going to fill in the shape here with the train tool. Again, if you want to do small detail work, it's best to have your train tool at its smallest size. Have your speed be at least 1.0. You can have it a lot faster and still have it filling great for stuff like this. Here I brought the size up to 180 just to give this a little thickness as it fills in the walls here on the edges. And since I'm right here, I'm going to fix this 45 and just shrink my tool down to its smallest size and go over to a spot where there's a good 45 and drag that over to fix the bad spot. If you ever have a situation where you don't have room to pop a leveling block maybe and make a fresh surface, this is one of those kind of guaranteed good spots as well. Since the 45-degree angle is present there, I know that that is a good true flat angle. I can grab from right next to the angle and then drag that over the floor, and you'll see that there's no wrinkles there. That was a good true flat spot. So now I'm just going to pop the block here and sort of close in the top of my house here. And then once again I'm going down to a 120 size here to do some small detailed work. For this wall, I'll go with a large picture window to look out onto our eventual garden that we'll plant here. Alright, that gives us our 4 walls. Next up is a ceiling. For the ceiling here, I'm going to keep my train tool at the smallest size and spread out what is mostly known as 1 pixel thick or 0 width soil. And it's basically a 2-dimensional surface. It's solid, we can walk on it, we can set stuff on it, but it doesn't have any depth to it. And the main thing is just that you have your size set to 120, the smallest possible size. The speed doesn't matter as much. You can crank the speed right up here, I'll crank it right up, and it will continue to spread the 1 pixel thick and stay on true flat. And here's a good angle where you can see how thin the 1 pixel thick is. The ceiling is going to end up 2 voxels deep, but I went with 1 pixel thick here first just so I would have the right depth to put in a ceiling light. And 2 voxels deep is just right for a work light sitting on top of a platform. I'm not going to be too fussy about where I place this light. I'm just going to try and get it mostly centered. Sometimes if I'm placing a bunch of platforms, I'll paint lines on the ceiling or the floor just so I can get the spacing right in between them. But this is just a single room with a light, so I'll just try and get it into the middle here. Now that that's in place, I'm going to put my leveling block up here on the ceiling and pop it twice to get 2 voxels of depth. Then I'm going to spread out that and fill in the ceiling. I've got 180, 220 size here, 180. So that's just something that's going to fill it in so it's not hollow and underneath there. And you'll see that I didn't lock the platform. That's not really necessary when you bury a platform. The most important thing is that the soil underneath the platform doesn't change shape. If the soil under the center of the platform does change shape, that's what causes it to buck out of the soil and not cooperate. So we have our house all roughed out now with 4 walls and a ceiling. The next thing that we're gonna need is a fancy looking roof. Look at that, working electricity. I once again have my train tool down to the smallest possible size, and I'm going to push out some 1 pixel thick here. I'm going to push it out 2 voxels beyond the edge of the roof, and this will be the bottom of our eaves. Now I'm going to pop up the leveling block to raise the height by 1 voxel so I can put a 45-degree angle along the outside edge. This is one spot where you have to make sure that your tool is at the smallest possible size, just because if it's any larger it will make soil bulge out of the bottom because the soil's so thin right here. Now if you wanted, you could just grab that 45-degree angle on the outside edge and push that right up to the peak and have a nice simple triangle roof. But I'm going to go ahead and pop the block here again and keep raising it up by 1 to make it look a little bit more like shingles. This time I actually made a bit of a mistake. I got the leveling block too close to the other 45-degree angle. So to fix this, it's pretty straightforward. Just make your train tool right around a 160 size and push that right across that front seam there, and that'll move that back. That true flat up on top of the new surface, that's still good. I can just flatten out from there and continue on. I decided early on that I would keep any mistakes that I make in the video, and then that way you guys could see how I deal with them. And if you run into the mistakes, you'd know it's not the end of the world. There's ways to fix this without redoing the whole thing. And we're about to see a pretty big mistake. I kept that platform unlocked to show you guys that it didn't need to be locked. Well, I just accidentally grabbed it. So now you'll see how I go around putting a fixture back into an already finished ceiling. And that's mainly going to have to do with digging a hole right through the ceiling, then going back up top and putting some 1 pixel back in there. Now that I have the 1 pixel back up on the ceiling, I'm just going to flatten out a little bit and make sure I have enough room to set down the platform. That placement looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and lock it this time. Now just bury it over, and this whole thing never happened. Back to the roof here, I'm just going to continue with one more step before I switch over to the other side and bring it up to meet in the middle, roughly. So we're bringing out the 1 pixel thick here by 2 voxels, just like we did with the other side to start it out. And since you folks just saw how this works, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up until I meet up in the middle of the roof. There's not room for another step here, but there is room for a little peak. So I'm going to flatten out down the very center here with the smallest possible terrain tool size. Clean up any little bits that stick out like that. And then I'll turn around and make the peak down the other side. Then we just trim off these extra little bits here in the middle, and we have ourselves a completed roof. This thing will keep the rain out. Just fill in these ends here with your terrain tool, and then we'll be ready for some painting. If you are working creative, this is a great spot to hide a terrain anchor, one of these little cubby holes that you're going to cover up with terrain anyway. Just put this inside here and turn this on, and that'll just make sure that if you want to back up and get some really cool pictures of your scene later on, everything will be rendered in and look really good. Now I'm going to start painting the walls. I'm going to go with the outside here first, and I think I'll go with the white from the snow in Silva's Mountains. If you're in adventure mode, this is where you have to use the terrain analyzer and go get a sample of the color you want and use the inhibitor mod. The wiki has a good explanation of how that stuff all works, but I'm going to try and cover that in my next video, where I'll do some more adventure stuff. I found some unfinished parts as I was painting here, so I'm going to fill those in and then finish up painting the outside walls. Once that's done, I'm going to paint the inside ceiling white as well. Don't worry about painting over the edges with your first coat of paint, as the next color will take care of the borders. Next up is the roof, and I'm going to go with the deep sparkly red for the roof. At first I was thinking about just painting a border along the edge of the roof, but this is one of those voxel things. You can see on the left I have sharp 90-degree angles, on the right I have nice smooth 45s, and there's not really much to be done about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and color in the whole top and make a border that way. For the inside walls, I think I'll go with this really sweet light blue. It's one of my favorite colors on the RGB spectrum. And then I'll just touch up the white windowsills there as I go as well. Now I'll just throw some brown down on the floor here. Alright, and we have ourselves one completed house. So if you are completely anti-gardening, this is where you would sign off on the video, I guess. If you just can't stand the idea. But for the rest of us that want to put in a few plants, I'm going to make kind of the picket fence design. I've used this fence design in quite a few of my projects, and that's just because it's really recognizable as a fence. And here you can see me actually making another mistake, and that is forgetting that while you can make true flat with any high speed, no problem, what high speed does is it fills in soil really quick. So what I'm trying to do is leave a hole in the soil. So I'm just going to slow my terrain tool now down to a solid 1.00 with the size 120, and now I'll try making that fence again. So that's working a lot better, and the main idea here is to just drag your terrain tool right along that very top edge, and then it will reach down and join with the ground on its own kind of thing and make those triangle bases. I'm just going to chew out this little piece here. So we have quite a few spots where the basis didn't come in properly. That's just because the soil isn't quite true flat where it meets up with the natural soil. We don't have to worry about that right away though. We'll fix all that up as we finish up. I'm just going to chew out the corners here a little bit and try and get those looking more like a thin fence. I'll put one more side on this fence and then I'll come back and touch up all of the paint. Here we have one of those weird pieces of soil on our fence like we had in our windows and our doors, and we're going to fix it the same way out here. Just dig it away, grab some true flat nearby and spread it back over. Now I'll just put some fence posts on this and touch up the fence. Here's another little mistake I made along the way. I grabbed a bad angle here and started to flatten out and ended up destroying part of my fence. But no worries on this one. That one's pretty easy to fix. Just reach back over to where you know you have some good true flat right next to a nice 45 and spread that back out and everything pops back into place. That finishes up the fenced in area, so now it's just up to you to go pick some plants out. Right now it's sturdy squash season, so I'm going to go ahead and plant those in my garden. Plant whatever you like, and once you have those in place, you have your very own house and garden in Astroneer. Alright folks, well I hope that answers some questions for you about true flat. I had a lot of fun making this new long format video, and as usual, we'll see you in the next one.